Hello everyone, welcome back if you're a returning viewer, or welcome if you're new to the channel. I'm Rainie and I love documenting the things I crochet here. Like a diary if you will, my crochet diaries. Now let's talk about this Starry sweatband. I've just released a written pattern for it, replete with detailed instructions and resources to set you up for making your very own star-studded sweatband. You can support the channel by purchasing the pattern over on Ko-fi. I've left the link in this video's description. What I'd like to cover in this episode is an accompanying tutorial on the juiciest part of the pattern, where I show you how to, quite literally, work up the stars of the show using a jacquard technique or tapestry crochet that leaves a beautifully seamless design. Does that sound good? Let's get into what materials and tools we'll need. In my pattern I recommend a sport weight yarn. Pick two contrasting colours, I think that works best, an A colour and a B colour, and pair that with a 3mm crochet hook. Have the standard tools around, scissors, darning needle, and potentially stitch markers and a measuring tape. For today's demo, I'll be making a smaller sample with some pre-existing yarn. Let's briefly discuss the construction of this project. What I'll be focusing this tutorial on is working up the star with some additional fabric on the top and bottom of it, which is repeated several times over to wrap around the circumference of your head. If we look at the wrong side of the swatch, I'll show you how to achieve this jacquard technique of alternating between carrying unused yarn behind our work and working over it, so that we get a right side that looks seamless without too much of the opposing color peeping through, and a tidier wrong side that ultimately doesn't create a bulky fabric. The swatch is comprised of 21 by 21 stitches, which measures around 10 by 9 centimeters or 4 by 3.5 inches. I've worked ahead for this demo by chaining a multiple of 21 with my A color. I've worked the repeating pattern twice, so I've chained 42. Then I've gone ahead and worked a single crochet into every stitch for the next 12 rows to form the bottom of my fabric. Let's now begin row 13 where the B color is introduced. Let's have that at the ready and work over it with 4 stitches in my A color. To change colours, I'll work my A colour to the final 2 loops of the last stitch. Drop it behind my work because this is my right side, pick up my B colour and use it to pull through my loops. Let's do that again. I'll only need my B colour for 1 stitch here, so with 2 loops on my hook, I'll drop my B colour behind my work and pick up my A colour to pull through the loops on my hook. After a colour change, I tend to float the unused yarn behind my work, and then begin alternating by working over it, then floating it, so on. I will often gently tug on the last colour used after a colour change to just make sure the tension isn't too loose. After several stitches, here's how the back of my work is looking. I'm going to be mindful of my tension so that in between colour changes, my work doesn't pucker should it be too tight. Now I've got 11 stitches in my A colour before 1 stitch in my B colour, and I'll work that change in the same way again. To finish off the row, I've got 4 more stitches in my A colour. You'll see that I've used a stitch marker to signal where the pattern repeats again. You're welcome to do the same. So I'll work ahead with my repeat and meet you at the start of the next row. For row 14, I'm facing the wrong side of my work. I'll start the same way with 4 stitches in my A colour followed by 2 in my B colour. Because I'm facing the wrong side of my work, I'm going to carry and work over my unused colour on this side. When a colour change does happen, make sure to drop the yarn and move it out the way towards the stitches you've just worked. Then carry it over the next stitch and work over it in the following stitch. After my 2 stitches in B, I'm going to change back to my A colour for 9 stitches, followed by 2 in B again and 4 in A. I should also say, working with multiple colours in a project can easily lead to some tangled yarn, so after each row I'd recommend untangling them then. Don't forget to chain 1 to turn your work after each row. Okay, onto row 15. I'm facing the right side of my work again, so carrying and working over unused yarn will happen in the back. The pattern starts with 4 stitches in my A colour, 4 stitches in B, 5 in A, 4 in B and 4 in A. What I'm doing at this row is to basically widen the 2 bottom corners of the star. For row 16, I'll work 5 in A colour, 4 in B colour, 3 in A, 4 in B and 5 in A. If you're crocheting along with me, I hope that you're adjusting to carrying unused yarn and working over it along the wrong side of work. The reason I alternate between the two is to avoid too much of the unused yarn showing through on the right side. Onto row 17 where I'll work 5 in A colour, 5 in B colour, only 1 in A, and then 5 in B and 5 in A again. For rows 18 and 19, nice and simple, I'll be working 6 stitches in my A colour, 9 in B and 6 in A again. We've finished the 2 bottom corners of our star at this point, and we're moving on to the corners on either side. Since this pattern repeats over 2 rows, I'll meet you at the start of row 21. While editing this, I seem to have missed row 20, so the pattern for that row is 7 single crochet in A colour, 7 in B, followed by 7 in A again. We're somewhat at the halfway mark here, so for row 21, I'm going to work 5 stitches in A colour, 11 in B, and 5 in A again. And what we'll begin to see as we work is more use of our B colour as we stitch up the 2 corners on either side of our star. Row 22 has a pattern repeat of 4 in A colour, 13 in B, and 4 in A again. For row 23, I'm going to work 3 stitches in my A colour, 15 in B, and 3 in A. Okay everyone, row 24 sees the longest use of the B colour with a repeating pattern of just 1 stitch in A colour, 19 in B, and 1 in A again. After this row, I would have finished with the 2 corners of my star, and we'll start on the base of the topmost corner. For rows 25 to 26, I'm going to work 8 stitches in my A colour, 5 in B, and 8 in A again. As this pattern repeats over 2 rows, I'll work ahead and meet you at the start of rows 27 to 28. Onto the next 2 rows, I'm going to be working 9 stitches in my A colour, 3 in B, and 9 in A again for rows 27 to 28. As we continue to reduce the use of the B colour to create a sharp point to the star. For the following 3 rows, rows 29 to 31, I'll work 10 stitches in my A colour, 1 in B, 10 in A again to round out the shape of the star. So I'll work ahead again and meet you after I've completed row 31. Very much the home stretch now. The work on the star is basically finished. So I'll cut off my B colour and weave that tail end in. The rest of the pattern calls for another 12 rows from rows 32 to 43 of single crochet stitches to form a solid fabric at the top of the star. That, combined with the bottom piece I started crocheting, will form what will seam together. Once you've completed row 43, do not cut off the working yarn, as we'll use it continuously to seam up the sweatband. Okay everyone, my sample that I've made today is finished. If you followed along to my written pattern, the fabric you would have made should be rectangular in shape. It's now time to join the short and long edges together for it to better resemble a sweatband. For the short edge, I'll measure 3 times the length of it with my working yarn and then cut off. For the short edge, I'm facing the sides of my stitches, so I'll just be working into these loops on either sides to weave them together. With the right side facing up, I'll pick up a loop off of one side, and then I'll do the same on the adjacent side of the same row. I'll do that back and forth to weave both sides together before moving on to the long edge. Okay, with the short edge done, I've still got some length left from my earlier seam, so I'll continue using it. If you run out, just measure around 3 times the length of what you need to seam up. I'll turn my work inside out, and now I'll fold the top and bottom sides down, so again I'll be seaming this long edge with the right side up. As I'm working with the top and bottom edges of my work, I'll use a mattress stitch to seam the sides together. First, I'll take my darning needle under the loop on the opposite side to square up both edges. With a mattress seam, I'll insert my needle from front to back under a stitch, and I'll do the same on the other side. To join a new row together, I'll always insert my hook back into the previous stitch, and I'll go under and over into the next stitch up on the seam. And I'll just continue joining both sides together this way. Once that's done, I'll secure my working yarn. I might tuck the end into the sweatband itself and tie off. That's the final step in terms of assembling the sweatband. I always recommend you wash your newly completed project before wearing it out. Check out what your yarn's ball band recommends. But if you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Do check out the written pattern on Ko-fi, and I will see you in 2024. Happy holidays and a safe new year.